Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? It is Friday evening, so you know what time that means. It's time for another episode of No Label Live. And this show is all about conversations around labels and how they impact our daily life. So I bring on individuals to talk about different areas of life and how labels impact those areas. Today, we are going to dive deep into relationships and what that means. So I know that in your past, you've been labeled. Right now, you are currently living by labels. And the great thing is, in the future, you can design your life around the labels that you choose. So I would like to invite our guest this week, Mr. William J. Fulton, to introduce himself. He is the expert guy, and I met him over a year ago at emotional intelligence training, and we've gotten closer over the past couple months and diving deep in what it means to be a vulnerable man and be a vulnerable human to create experiences in life that bring out the best in us. So, Will, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, awesome, Nathan. Well, thanks for having me on tonight. I'm excited to dive into what I've been up to, and sharing with the world, what it really means to be a vulnerable man and the experiences that I've gone through in my past, and what I'm doing to change the future for myself and others around me. So right now, I'm currently working on my blog. I write a lot about my past experiences I've had with women in relationships. I'm 24 years old right now, and I've been in close to 2 to 3 serious relationships. I've dated multiple women and had amazing experiences with all these women. They've each taught me a very, very powerful lesson on vulnerability, finding myself, and helping others grow as well. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I do a lot of writing, going to be submitting a few posts with some sites in the near future. But right now, it's really about sharing my experiences and spreading the word of vulnerability and how that can really teach men to have these powerful relationships with the women in their lives.
So, I mean, that's beautiful, man, because your whole thing is about changing a label. So, my first question to you is, what does it mean to be a vulnerable man?
So I think there's a lot of discussion, lately around vulnerability. And in the past, being vulnerable always meant being weak. And that's not really how it's viewed. I think in the, mid-century and then growing up, a lot of men and fathers taught their sons that crying, sharing emotions, telling your loved ones around you how much you love them came off as a weak person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, in today's world, that's not so much of what it's viewed as. I think we're growing up in a world where men opening up about what they're feeling in a certain situation, whether that be sad, whether that be happy, and just being extremely honest with themselves and with others around them, especially with the women in their life. Because, from my experience, women love men who are vulnerable. And that's what really attracts women to strong men. Women don't view vulnerability is a weak sign, from a male, in any type of romantic relationship. And like I said, really to be vulnerable, I really think it comes down to being honest with yourself, who you are as a person, and not being afraid to show that to the world. and most importantly to the women in your life. And that can be the woman you're dating, but even your mom, your sister, just being extremely open, and vulnerable with, women and even men that you come across with in your life. Your close friends, your family members. That's extremely important. So yeah.
Yeah. So as you were talking, I was thinking that absolutely. I don't think I know we're focused on the man woman dynamic right now, but I think
Yeah,
it carries over no matter what type of relationship that is,
absolutely.
because you mentioned it. It's about being honest with who you are, how you want to show up to that person, and
Yeah.
really for me it's about, man, one of the biggest keys, and I learned this through our experience in the training together, is the ability to listen
Yeah.
and not have all the answers.
Definitely. That's key. That's very important.
um, and you mentioned family relationships, and most importantly to me, I think the men to men dynamic, right, of being
Yeah.
vulnerable. So I want to dive into that a little bit more, about what your experience has been with being more vulnerable with the other men in your life.
Yeah. Just a little, quick tip on my childhood, but growing up, my parents were married. They're still married. I have two sisters, but growing up, I never really, opened up to who I was and what I was feeling to my dad. And that relationship with him is gotten extremely better in the past, year and a half, 2 years. But growing up, I was really afraid to express myself to my dad, because in my household, he did a lot of lashing out. The way he expressed himself was in anger, and he didn't really know how to relate to people. So growing up, when you see this as a kid, you kind of mimic what your parents do, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you're in a household of parents that do that, and that took me a while to work through, and I can finally say at this moment, this day. I no longer, lash out in anger like I used to years and years ago. And, it mainly stemmed from the reason of because I didn't really know how to express myself. I didn't know how to be vulnerable with friends, with women. But back to your question on how vulnerability has changed my relationship, with my friends, is you're always going to have judgment. I think your whole life you're always going to be judged by others,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it's really just working through that, and overcoming that, and not kind of taking offense to it. There's always people out there that are going to be judging you constantly, until the day you die. That's just life, in my opinion. But with friends that are really close to me, and just men in general that I've met, is that when you're in a room with people that, let's say, aren't used to being vulnerable, and you be vulnerable to them, that really creates a safe space for people.
Yeah.
And especially for men, I think even, like I said, I'm only 24 right now, but I still see a lot of men around my age that really have a tough time opening up. And not even, like we said, not even with women, just with friends, of just being really who they are as men. But in my experience, when my friends and people that are close to me see me opening up about, let's say, fears I have or bad experiences that I've had, that
Mm-hmm.
I've struggled with and grown from, it really creates a safe space for people. And what I've realized also is that when you're vulnerable, people really look up to you as a leader. Uh, you know, especially men, when they see someone opening up about certain struggles that they've had, you really, really come up as a leader to other men, and that's what men want, and that's what they follow. And I think showing up in that way has made me more powerful as a person, and has shown the world what my power really is, and has made others powerful as well. So yeah, that's what's really changed for me.
So, with all that has opened up for you, like, what's the like one nugget that kind of started to make that shift for you, where you were like, I know this is what I've seen modeled,
Yeah.
and now I feel more comfortable with opening up to other people.
I think a big shift for me was that I held a lot of things in for years that I was passionate about. Interests I had, just simple things like hobbies that I was really interested in, that even I was afraid of sharing with friends and with women I was dating. And a big shift for me was that when you show up as a vulnerable person, and you tell people who you really are, what you stand by, what your values are in, you become more free every time. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think a lot of us go through life kind of caged up inside, and we never really, like I like to say, spread our wings, and we don't know what we're capable of, because we're not expressing ourselves. We're not really being like true to who we are as people. So I think for me, once I started practicing, and this isn't an overnight thing. Being vulnerable, and changing and transforming, that takes years. But if you work at it every day, and you do something, or you tell someone something that you were afraid to tell something to someone, it's just going to make you more free. And the more you do that, the more you're going to feel like yourself. The happier you're going to be. Your mind's going to be a lot clearer. And that's what really made the shift for me, is once I just took a little step and did more every day, and did something that scared me each day, I felt more free over time. And it's still a work in progress. I'm still working at it, and I'm never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. But if you practice each day, and you get better and better every day, you're going to feel more free as a person.
So, if I'm sitting here, I'm watching, I'm liking what you're saying, what's an example of something like when you did it, you were scared to do it? That one step for that day. What's an example of something you did that you were scared, but once you did it, you were like, "Oh, I feel so much better. I feel like you said, I feel free."
Yeah, I mean, and recently I can definitely touch upon something. A girl I was dating a few months back. Um, a big thing for me is when I start dating someone, and I either date them, or I it turns into a long-term relationship, whatever. Um, just opening up about my interests that I have in life was always tough for me. So for instance, Nathan, I'm very into this whole relationship thing, and vulnerability, and emotional intelligence, and doing workshops, and personal development stuff. And uh, when I've told people about that in the past, they kind of like were thrown back, like, why do you do that stuff? Or, why are you into that? Like, you're crazy, or you're insane, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the most recent girl I was seeing, when I opened up, this was a good example about my blog, and what I enjoy reading on relationships and psychology, and studying men and women dynamics, and masculine, feminine energy, and all this different stuff. It felt so freeing to say that. And even when I tell my friends about this stuff, about where my interests lie and what I'm doing, and they just sit there and listen and, don't judge or really accepting of it. When people are really accepting and, like you mentioned earlier, listen to you, it makes you feel very free. And I think that would be like a really good recent example of what's really worked well for me and how I felt after I said that.
So actually opening up in conversation. Um, so when you think about, because you've been studying relationships and, like you said, dynamics for a long time. When you think about what's you're creating for the year ahead,
Yeah.
what are you most excited about, where you see what you're doing going?
Like just what's working, like let's say for myself or for my blog, or what
Yeah,
exactly?
so when you think about what you're creating with the relationship guy,
Yeah.
for the other publications, what's
Yeah.
most excited about being that person?
I think what's most exciting about it is when I get really positive feedback, not only from men, but from women too. And, I like to focus on men and vulnerability with men. But when I get really good feedback from women about how empowering it is to read the stuff that I write or to hear me talk about it, that's really exciting to me. Getting feedback, whether that be positive or negative, right? Uh, Either or is great feedback. Constructive feedback is good feedback because you learn from that and you move forward. But that's what I think I'm really excited about is writing more. I started a mastermind group where we're meeting once a month and talking about personal life and professional life and what's working, what's not working with women in our life and what we're kind of struggling with. So that's what I'm really excited for is just listen to what other people are going through and empower them, kind of create this movement that's already going on of vulnerability in men, but not only in men, just in everyone and, everyday life.
And if I'm watching and I'm not uh, 24, right?
Yeah.
I'm 40, I'm 50,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting here saying, what can a 24-year-old tell me about relationships? What's your answer to that?
Uh, that's tough. I think there's a lot of, many people have said that to me. I think that for me, I've been studying this. I've been experiencing it probably since I was, 18 years old, a senior in high school, right? Where I really started understanding women, dating women, opening up about myself. And I think for me, there definitely are going to be older men out there that, there's always going to be men out there or women out there that'll say, who's this 24-year-old guy? He hasn't really had a lot of life experience yet or really relationship experience yet. But I think when people hear what I have to say and the experiences I've had and I'm willing to listen and take feedback, that's what's good. And I think I see a lot of friends in my age group, and I have friends that are in their 20s, in their early 30s, in their upper 20s, and a lot of them struggle with relationships and and dating women. And I think that's like an age group that I'm obviously focused on more so. But I think for older men, if like you said, if they're looking at me or reading stuff and saying, who's this kid to say all this stuff, well, I think just listening and having the conversation, and really hearing what I have to say versus like instantly labeling me as an inexperienced person who
Mm.
hasn't really had many years of his life, completed yet. So that's what I would say to that.
All right. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. It's just a label, and we all have our own experiences that nobody else in the world has
Yeah,
experienced before. So you can absolutely bring value no matter your age, your gender, your race.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So as you were talking, I was thinking about we're going to do something that I've not done thus far on the show before. So I
Yeah.
will give you the opportunity to, we're going to flip roles a little bit. And
Yeah.
I want you to ask me some questions that come up for you on a regular basis. And let's dive into how that shows up for me. You down for that?
Yeah. Still.
All right.
So,
Go ahead.
all right. So I think for me, Nathan, what I want to ask you is, in doing what you're doing now, and no labels define me. And how would you say, and I touched upon this in the beginning, but how would you say, vulnerability has impacted your business and your life right now? And how are you implementing it every single day in your life?
Oh man. Okay. Awesome question. So, because we both went through our training together, I think that had a huge impact on where I am right now with my vulnerability journey.
Yeah.
And I would say the way that it showed up when we first started was
Hmm.
um, I had huge walls that were just always up.
Yeah.
And as I started to shift, I realized that in order to show up and be who I really want to be, I had to start trying to tear some of that down. And much like you, I think it comes from what was actually modeled
Yeah.
from when I was younger. So you get a lot of the uh, boys don't cry,
Yeah.
dirt on it, uh,
Yeah.
don't show emotion, right? So that was super strong for me. And one of the greatest gifts that I got was being told that I didn't listen. That's why
Mm.
that's so important to me.
Okay.
Um, that showed up for me huge. And so with what I do now, I think whenever I'm talking to someone about shifting their mindset and taking different actions, I think it comes up from just giving you the opportunity to be more of yourself. And so
Okay.
I try and show up myself in ways where I'm like, okay, if I was looking at this from the outside, what would I really want to see from somebody else?
Yeah.
And like that's part of the reason why now, if you watch most of my videos, I'll be wearing like the tights, right? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
let's just put that out there, and um, people stare all the time when you
Yeah.
have a disability that people can see. So I'm like,
Yeah.
they're gonna look, so let's give them something to look at, type deal. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it just goes back to asking yourself, what do you want? Like every day, what do I want for my
Yeah.
day to day, and
Yeah.
create that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What you mentioned breaking down walls, right? And I think a lot of people, and I think you could probably agree with me, are always fighting the wall their entire life, and they don't really know how to break down these walls. What would you say you've done to break down walls to get to where you're at right now? Uh, but more so, what would you tell people out there that are really struggling, that are just they're hitting this point every single day, and they just don't know how to break through it, and they're just stuck. So
Yeah,
what would you say to that?
I would say my personal experience would be um, I'm trying to think of the best story to tell. It's the fact that in the disability world, because that's a big part of my world, right? You get people that come up to you almost all the time and say, "You're such an inspiration,"
Yeah.
right? And they don't know you from anything, right? And so a lot of people put up walls where they're like, "Oh, I hate that you just said that to me because I'm just out there living my life." And I say that because I was that person. But I think that's a point where people get stuck because they miss the opportunity to communicate with the person in front of them to change their perspective about who I am and what my disability like represents. That is
Yeah.
just a circumstance that showed up in my life that actually has given me the opportunity to be inspirational and to make a bigger impact on the world. So I think if you're sitting somewhere and you're feeling stuck, it's about
Mm,
having the uh, awareness to start to have conversations with people where you feel
hmm.
like there's a wall that's built up.
Yeah.
And just having a conversation can start to take that down. Also, I think that it goes back to like if you're stuck, a lot of times we don't ever ask for help
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
And when we're able to do that, there's always going to be somebody that's a step ahead of you from what
Hmm.
you want to be. And
Yeah.
most people like to help other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah. I think,
ask for help.
yeah, I mean, I could definitely, just a quick tip, I could definitely mention that is, and I'm sure you'd agree with me on this, but with me, growing up and even now, what I honestly struggle with the most is reaching out and asking for support and help. And that takes, I think, a big step for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
because, like we said, back to the vulnerability thing, asking for help and asking for support was always really deemed as you being weak. Um, and you don't succeed by yourself. You succeed with the people around you, and how you got to where you were going, from the help of others and the support of others around you. So, for me, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a big step for a lot of people, because they don't know how to communicate to reach out and ask for help. Whether that could be the simplest thing of getting advice on something, asking for help in a certain situation that they don't really know how to handle it. Uh, I think that's where a lot of miscommunication happens especially in relationships, is, reaching out to your partner and asking for support, asking them for advice on something that you really need help with, and I think that's definitely a good thing. But that's another thing that, that goes back to, that's something that you got to work at every day, because I still struggle with that all the time, is reaching out and asking the people around me that maybe are doing the things that I want to do, that I look up to or I seek advice from, and just asking for support.
Yeah, and I think that's key too, is realizing like everybody's got expertise in different things. So
Yeah.
it's about asking for the support that they actually have the expertise in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think for me, ways that has shown up is a lot of times when we get stuck, it's because asking for help not only has been seen as a weakness, but it's also seen as a hindrance to the other person. Like I hear, I don't want
Yeah.
to bother so and so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just us projecting what we think it's going to create in the future.
Yeah.
And we always tend to take things to like the worst case scenario, and we don't
Yeah.
often get to the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so what going back to like more of the dating aspect, and so what would you say if I'm a young dude and I'm sitting there and I'm saying I don't really know how to communicate with my partner, I don't even know where to start, what kind of tips would you give uh, that guy on the other end of the screen?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And I think for me, and what I've struggled with in the past too, I think the first thing that you really, really have to get good at is listening. And men have the toughest time listening. And that's not only listening to their partner, but just listening in general. Uh, I'll tell you something now that, and I know a lot of women can agree with this, but women remember everything. They, they remember what you wear, what you said, I've been in relationships where, my girlfriend has brought up something I said 6 months ago that I don't even remember, or, I did something. So I think the first thing to do is just listen, because, men are biologically wired to solve things and to solve and fix things. Like, we're the fixers. So like,
Mm-hmm.
whenever a girl or woman comes to you with a problem or something they're struggling with, we're like, oh my God, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. I think this is the best thing you should do. And, this is how it should be. And the thing is women don't want to hear that.
What? No.
What's really worked for me is just, I kind of used to. I still do this thing where, if your girlfriend comes to you and you don't know what she's thinking, you don't know what she's feeling, just say, listen, I felt something's off lately, and I love you, I appreciate you, I want to communicate with you, but I want to listen to what I want to listen, right now about what you're going through, and if you want my advice, I want you to let me know.
Mm.
But I think communicating in that way, when, a woman comes to you and, she's talking to you about her day, what she's struggling with, just ask her, be like, hey, do you want me to listen, or do you want my input on certain things? And what a lot of women like too, and this is just humans in general, is when we're communicating with people, a great thing to do is, when someone tells you something, is repeat back to them what they just said. And that's really powerful when you're dating someone, because, your girlfriend or your wife, I think, could be talking to you and you're just like, yeah, 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 yeah. And to them, yeah means, oh, I don't care, I'm not listening, go away. It means that you kind of don't really care what they have to say. But like, I always say, like, ask the questions of like how, when, where, why, ask those things of like, oh, how did that feel? How did that make you feel? Why do you think that happened? And repeat back to your girlfriend or wife what they're saying to you, because that alone in itself is really important, because they're going to know you're listening to them. And that goes for any, that could be your friend, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, anything, is because when you do that, and I've known I felt that way, is when I'm speaking to someone and I'm telling them something and they repeat back to me what I told them, that makes me feel heard and understood. Because all we want to do, as humans, we just want to feel wanted, we want to feel heard, we want to feel understood. So, if you do those things and practice them on a consistent basis and just listen, like seriously listen, and ask questions, and, ask how you could be of support to your girlfriend, your wife, um, you know, that I think right
Friends.
there is a really, and just be present with them. that is just a really, really good start to communicating better. If you're struggling with that.
Oh man, so be present. So what does it look like to be present in the digital world we live in today?
Uh, Going back to what I just said, is listening, is repeating back to your friend, your girlfriend, your wife, to what what you're doing. I People are constantly on their phones today, and I can tell you right now, like the worst thing to do is if you're dating someone and your girlfriend, or you're talking to your girlfriend or whatever, and you're sitting there with your phone in your hand, or you're on the computer doing something like that. Right there is just not a good start. I think in today's world, a man and a wife, they're working, they might have kids, but people get distracted. And I think when people come home at the end of the day, and their spouse or their girlfriend, their boyfriend sitting there, and they don't really seem too interested in what the other person's saying, that's just going to really cause a disconnect over time. So I think it's just like putting the phone down, saying you're not going to touch your phone for an hour, 2 hours, whatever that may be. It could be 5 minutes, whatever, and just being fully present, and telling your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend that you're present right now, and you want to be 100% there at the moment.
Yeah, I imagine that that's going to make a big difference. And if you notice, a big part of today's episode has been about one word, and that's listening, right? That makes a huge, huge difference. That's why we keep hammering on that topic. And
Yeah.
for any human, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, it does go back to, we want to feel heard, we want to feel understood, and we want to feel loved. And just by listening, and that tip about repeating back is huge. Because if you repeat back, it gives you, so if I repeat back what you said to me and it's not anywhere close, can give you the opportunity to say, oh, that's not what I meant at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, is there anything, I've got a couple more questions, but is there anything that you would like to talk about that I have not touched on thus far?
I think a good thing I wanted to bring up is I think for boys in high school, and from what I went through, is like and even people in college, I think today's world is kind of changing with like online dating. And I always get like the questions asked from people is like, you know I want a girlfriend, or I'd like to have a girlfriend, but I ask them the question like, okay, why do you want a girlfriend? Why do you really want a girlfriend? And I think you have to be in a place in your life where you fully understand yourself, and you're happy being alone. Because if you can't have fun just hanging out by yourself and laughing with yourself and fooling around with yourself, then I don't know if it'd be the best idea to date someone, right? So I think a lot of people go into relationships looking for the other person to complete them. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong in dating when they're younger, is that it's kind of like an insecurity thing where, and I've experienced it myself, where I was dating a woman, and I kind of looked for my self-satisfaction from her, because I didn't feel complete within myself. So I think for men my age out there, even men that are younger than me, in high school, early in college, is if you think you want a girlfriend or you want a relationship, is like, first ask yourself the question, why? And am I ready for a relationship? Am I fully myself? Am I really going to help this other person grow? because I never really believed in how, people say when, oh, this person's my other half, this and that. I never was a believer in that. I was always that a relationship is two wholeheartedly complete people coming together and sharing a love experience and helping each other grow personally. And that's really what a relationship is in a partnership. So
That's
I think,
powerful. The showing up both 100% and not 50-50.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Because
Um,
I think
yeah,
that's
go ahead.
definitely a good point to bring up and to tell people out there.
And what I was thinking was, uh, so some of the shows I listen to, they get into this a little bit, and they've got interns who are in high school, and there's
Yeah,
really been a shift in how dating is happening these days, where kids are actually asking those questions.
yeah,
Um, whereas I feel like when you said talked about your experience, the word that came up for me was obligated. Like when
yeah,
when you're in high school, part of the story is you date, and there's like
yeah,
obligation, a feeling of being obligated to date because it's what you're supposed to do.
yeah, yeah. Or it's what the people, your friends, are doing around you, and you kind of feel that. I know for me in high school was like, all my friends were getting girlfriends, and I was over here like not really knowing myself or how to communicate with girls or just how to approach a girl and talk to her. So, I think that's a big issue with a lot of like younger boys in high school is that they don't really know who they are yet. They're going through like puberty. They're doing this, they're doing that, and they don't really know them. You don't really know yourself when you're in high school and beginning of college. And I think it's important to know that before you get into a relationship, if you want to or if it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's powerful too, to know that it's definitely a personal choice.
Yeah, everything's a choice.
Um, and so when you think about relationships and what you're up to, if you were going to be choosing a label for the relationship, let's say relationships in your life. So this label,
Yeah.
a phrase, is going to be a representation for what you want to create in all your relationships. I think I know the word, but we'll see. What label do you want to give to the relationships in your life?
Can you like, what do you exactly do you mean?
Yeah,
Like in
so
terms of my romantic relationships
yeah,
or
so in
what do you,
terms of your relationships, like you were sitting here and I said, okay, I want you to put your label of what leaves you feeling like you have empowered and rich relationships. What word or phrase would you want to represent the relationships in your life?
I mean, be vulnerable. 2 words, be vulnerable. That's it. I think when you're vulnerable, it opens up a world of possibilities with your partner. That's conversationally, sexually, um, everything. And I think when you do that, you're only going to become closer and closer and closer, and you're going to grow more together. Because in my experience, when you're not vulnerable and you're not communicating, you start going down this path of resentment.
Mm,
Because what happens is you start assuming things that are happening in the relationship that aren't really happening. And that stems from not being able to openly communicate. And that stems from being vulnerable. So when you're vulnerable with yourself and with the person you're dating and you're in a relationship with, that just will create more opportunities for two people to become closer together.
And yeah, that's powerful. So I definitely like the fact that when you're not able to communicate and when you're not able to be vulnerable, that key phrase there I think was the assumptions, right? Because we start to make up the stories that
Yeah,
we want to say this is happening for this reason, and usually when we make assumptions is to protect ourselves, even if it's not what's
exactly.
going on.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, how can you mentioned this earlier, but I just want to repeat for the listeners and the viewers, how can people connect with you?
So if you go to my blog, williamjfulton.com, I have all my social media linked on there. So that's the best way to connect with me. My email's on there. I live in Philadelphia. Like I said, I have a mastermind group here that meets once a month. And we dive deep into business, personal life, romantic relationships, everything of, what's working, what's not working for people. But yeah, that's the best way. WilliamJFulton.com. It's the best way to contact me.
All right, cool. I've got two more questions, and it stem from what you just said. So
Yeah.
the first question is: pretend you are talking to your younger self,
Yeah.
right? And I want you, because you've mentioned this several times, I want you to talk to yourself about what's not working
Mm-hmm.
for you, and then I want you to talk about what is working and what's possible for you, your younger self, in your future that you've created now.
In just like personally, professionally, everything.
Yeah, anything you want to tell your younger self.
My younger self is yeah, I don't know. This is funny to bring up, but in terms of like dating, uh, I had a lot of what you ever you want to call it crushes. Like, I liked girls in high school, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but a big thing for me was I had really bad acne in high school, and it really really affected my like self-worth, my confidence, everything. And I liked, this one girl, and I was like obsessed with her, man. And my younger self in high school, I did not do anything about it. And honestly, I still think about this one girl to this day, and this was 6, 7 years ago, right? So I think to like younger, boys and men out there is like, don't be afraid to like start a conversation with someone. Because you never know unless you ask or you try. Like we went back to the thing of, assuming things is, a lot of people go, oh, when they go to approach a girl or they go tell someone how they feel, they assume all these negative things that are going to happen, right? And they have no idea if that's going to actually happen. So, like for younger boys out there, I would just say, like, go ask her out, like, go talk to her, like, take a chance, because when you do that, you create a lot of opportunity. So, but not only dating too, I would just say that for everything is like, say yes to like every opportunity you get. Um, you know, just try it. And because, you're going to fail, you're going to constantly fail. Um, and you just got to keep failing and moving forward. But you have to try. And I think when you do that at a younger age, it's going to be implemented into you, and you're gonna be way way ahead of the curve, and you're just gonna grow. You're gonna grow personally, professionally, and whatever you want to do with your life. So I say with my younger self is do that and just like really really focus on what I'm interested in. Not what other people are telling me to do or to be interested in. Is like focus on like what makes you happy and what you enjoy. Whether that be reading something, a hobby, whatever. Just like focus on that. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's going to support a lot of young dudes out there. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it supports everyone because I think we all get stuck in that from time to time of we don't want to take action because we made up the story in our head that it wasn't going
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Um, and you never know. Like it's a one word phrase could change your life. Just saying
That's it.
hi could
Yep.
change your life.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so the final question is, what does no label defines me mean to you?
Um, so the term no label defines me, I think means to me is that, um, anything anyone has ever said to me, made a judgment about me, said that's weird, that's stupid, that's never going to work, phrases like that. To me, it means that people could say or tell me or you or anyone out there a million things about what they think about them, but it's just about sticking true to yourself and being 100% committed uh, to yourself and to what you're trying to do in the world. Because I think a lot of people start doing things and they start putting labels on what they're doing because they're just hearing constantly these different labels and phrases about what they're doing, and then they stop and they get put down and they don't really know how to bounce back. But this, Nathan, and it's just people might not understand your vision and what you're trying to do, but as long as you understand it, that's what's most important. And just constantly reminding yourself of that every day, because you could explain something to someone a million times and they're still not going to understand it, but just telling yourself that and being 100% committed to whatever you're doing in the world is really, really important.
All right. Yeah, I think nobody else has your eyes, right? So they're not going to have your vision.
Exactly.
Um, and then, so this has been great. I think people are going to get a lot out of our conversation tonight. What is there anything before we hop off that you want to leave the audience with?
um I think for me, this has been definitely something that's brought up lately, in my life. But when it comes to dating and relationships, I think a lot of people are with people for months, for years. Marriages end or they're over, and a lot of people look back at their past and who they dated, who they spent time with, and they kind of see it as a waste. And I don't like it when I hate when people say that, and I used to do this too, of like, that person that I saw for a year, such a waste of time. She was such a waste of time. Um, and I think every time you enter into a new relationship, that when you go in with the mindset of, okay, uh, this might last for a while and I might really see my future self with this person, or it might not, but whatever happens, happens. And I'm going to put 100% in this relationship. I'm going to grow from it and I'm going to help the other person grow. Then your relationship will be so much better. Versus, I think a lot of people get in relationships and they just tell themselves, oh, this isn't going to last. Like, when is this going to end? Like, this isn't going to work. And I think taking day by day is really important in a relationship. And like going back to what we talked about earlier in the, in the conversation of just being present. Because for me, that really what affected my, my mind and my thinking in previous relationship is I was always constantly thinking about the future of the relationship. And I didn't really enjoy the present moment of the person I was with. So really just being present each day and, reminding yourself that this is an experience, it's a learning experience, you're growing and you're helping the other person grow. You'll and just openly communicating with each other each day, you'll be good, because not every day is going to be perfect. Like, you're going to have these shitty days. It's going to suck. You're going to hate the other person, whatever. I don't know, whatever you're going through, but it's just really, really, like we talked about, opening, communication, and just really listening to the other person. That's really, really, really powerful and important to do.
Dude, that's that's awesome. So I want to acknowledge you for the growth that I've seen in you over the past year, because I remember the very first day we started our journey together, and you are
Yeah.
the second person that I actually talked to. You sat down beside me,
Yeah.
and we probably said 2 words to each other.
Yep.
And we were both really hesitant. I feel to like,
Oh, yeah.
we were like, what are we doing here?
Yep. Yep.
And just to be able to see the growth of like what you are taking on now, from creating the mastermind to going on this journey as the relationship guy, dealing with relationships and throwing yourself 100% committed into that. I just want to say that's awesome and acknowledge you for that. And I know that people are going to get a lot out of this episode. So if you're
Yeah.
watching and you know someone who needs to see this, make sure and tag them. Make sure they get the link so that they can watch it. Make sure and share it with someone. And remember, when you're able to communicate, when you're able to listen, it will lead to growth, and you'll be up to big things. When you're up to big things, you have to be patient, you have to be diligent, and you must never, never quit. And
Absolutely.
catch you next time, next Friday, same station, same time.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man.